There we go.
All right. Hello, hello. People are joining. It's 11 o'clock on the West Coast. Scott, what time is it there? 2 o'clock.
It's 2
Almost
o'clock.
2 o'clock. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we see people jumping in. It's 1 minute until go time. And so we will start in just a couple of minutes once Zoom lets people in here.
Nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd. Or names, at least.
Yeah, I guess names, not faces. Yeah, it's been a while. Scott and I've done a webinar together, so it's great to be back. All right. Got 1 more minute. If anyone's so inclined in the chat, just let us know where you're calling in from, maybe what geographic location and what organization. We definitely want to make this conversation, and so we want to hear from you as we're kind of going through this presentation. Anybody want to share?
There we go.
Minnesota,
Maine, Cleveland State, Wilmington.
Nice. I'm from Orange County, CA. Anyone else from the OC? Grand Rapids, Charlotte, Massachusetts. I heard the Northeast is hot right now. Scott, is it in? Are you
nice today? It's 81, a little overcast, not too bad.
I think Phoenix definitely will win the award for hottest temperature, though. So that's true. The original Orange County. It's a little unknown fact. So I live in Orange County, California, which we like to believe is the original OC. But the original Orange County is actually in New York. And
I live in Warwick, New York.
Which is in Orange County. Right. All right.
Orange County.
All right. So, well, thank you all for entertaining us as we let people in. It's great to be here. I'm Nathan Chappell. I'm the Senior Vice President of DonorSearch AI. Like Scott said a few minutes ago, there's some friendly names here that we've met before. Scott and I used to do a lot of webinars together. There was a point where we were doing them like twice a month, I think, at least.
Yeah.
And it's been a while. I think it's been probably 6 months since we've done anything together, and we thought we'd kind of reboot a little bit, talk about AI, of course, because we're like one-trick ponies with that, but a little bit a different spin on this, which is related to a book that I wrote last year called The Generosity Crisis, and it was really more about why AI. So we'll start out the presentation with a little bit more about the why, not go into too much detail about it, and then we'll get into the AI portion of it. But like I said earlier, we really would like this to be conversational. It's always hard with Zoom when we can't see people's faces, so we feel like we're just talking to ourselves, but we'd love to hear from you. So any questions you have, this is your time. We really believe that, and so feel free to ask us anything. And also after, we'll have our contact information. You can follow up with us after as well. So thanks for everyone that jumped in here. Scott, do you want to introduce yourself and then we'll just kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Rosenkrantz. I'm Associate Vice President at DonorSearch AI. I started in the nonprofit sector 12 years ago as a prospect researcher and just absolutely fell in love with the sector as a whole, but more specifically the data, seeing how much data was being collected from the different organizations that I worked at as either staff or consultant, and how much could be done with it, though not so much was actually being done with it by the organization. So dabbling with predictive models, predicting who's going to make gifts in the future, brought me on a journey where I met Nathan about 6 years ago, and those predictive models have evolved into machine learning and deep learning AI models. So in my current role, I work with our incredible data science team and have worked with over 100 nonprofits across the country on custom machine learning models. So I love to talk everything AI and how to build, how to implement, and how to see success with it.
Yeah, and I didn't share this before, but I love when Scott shares that he came from prospect research, because whenever he's on a call with someone who is from prospect research, there's like this almost immediate empathy of like, oh, you too. I come more, I really spent 20 years in the fundraising side, fundraising and overseeing operations. And so it's usually the fundraisers that empathize with me of like, oh yeah, you too, like how much therapy have you been through? And so there is a lot of empathy in our sector, which I love. The fact that we've all kind of, we go through, every day we wake up and we make a decision, that while it's hard work, that at the end of the day, we've made a difference in the world. And that's what that unique bond is. And certain jobs are harder than others, and certain jobs are changing more than others, really because of AI. And so that's what we're really here to talk about and at the forefront of as well. And so it all to say and summarize, like, we're your people. And so we get it. We both have spent a really great careers in the nonprofit side, and have moved over to the essentially a private sector, but we only serve the nonprofit side. Real quick, just because of course we get paid by DonorSearch, so we have to. This will be the only plug for DonorSearch. DonorSearch is a family-run company. It's been around 15 years as of this year, serving around 10,000 nonprofit clients. Scott and I are very, very fortunate to lead the AI division, which means that we get to every day show up and try new things and explore different ways of doing business. And we're really, really proud of our work that we've been able to accomplish over the last, many years together. Scott and I have worked together since 2018, and really seen a big difference in our sector in moving away from this idea of what I would even consider what has always historically been called wealth screening companies, but really moving and pivoting to what really right now we consider an insights company. And so the response to that has been great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. And then Kristen, using some AI right there to create the transcript. This also is obviously being recorded. I believe you all consented when you jumped into it and had to approve that when it asked you. So it will go on YouTube usually within a day or two. And so all right, we're going to jump in on this topic called Tackling the Generosity Crisis with AI, an innovative approach to nonprofit fundraising. Like I just said, Scott and I both come from the fundraising world. It'd be one thing for consultants to tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, you should do differently if they've never spent a day in the fundraising seat. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to have lived through it and really understand the constraints and the gaps. And that's truly where we come, our lens to this conversation comes from our time working in the nonprofit space and having an understanding there are issues and gaps and constraints that we are facing to move forward. All right, so we'll just jump in, and again, please ask any questions you may have. I always like to start a presentation at the lowest common denominator, and so like really set your expectations super, super low for you to think that it's going to be super depressing, and it might be just for a few minutes, but if you stay with me, I promise that we turn a corner in just a little bit. These words are not my words, at least, but these words came out from a group called the Generosity Commission. You're all probably familiar with the Giving USA report that comes out every year and measures generosity in the United States. There's a group of concerned citizens within Giving USA that raised, I think, $1 million to $2 million on their own to study what was going on in generosity, because they were seeing the same trends that I was seeing for many years. They came up with this statement about 2 years ago, and it really made me think. It was that statement that, for those, which I assume all of you care deeply about the nonprofit sector, because that's why you chose that versus working for Coca-Cola or whatever, is that we have this almost burden and responsibility to the sector, not just to the organizations that we work in, but to the sector overall. So this statement is really kind of like, should make the hair on your neck go up. And the things that we think about in our society that we take for granted, and not just the typical ones, but like hospitals and higher ed institutions and zoos and playhouses and things like that. But all of the different ways that philanthropy essentially creates the glue that keeps society together. And if we think about this idea that we may be living in a world that's less generous than it is today, that should make us all concerned. This is actually the why that I started working in AI back in 2017. Fast forward, and just to give a quick plug to the Generosity Commission, their findings, their work was always very temporary. Their work was only going to be 2 years. They raised money to fund universities that are studying generosity. Those reports will all start coming out at the end of the summer. And so stay tuned and stay alert. I'll definitely be posting those on LinkedIn. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, do that. And you'll be able to see those reports that come out that hopefully have some guidance for what we can do differently. So 2022, again, just to pour some gasoline on the fire I just lit, is, and I won't go through all of these, but really just to say that the need for change in our sector has never been greater. 2022 was a first for a lot of reasons from a charitable giving perspective, and none of those reasons were positive. So, looking back at the last 20 years ago, 2/3 of Americans gave to charity, and now less than half give to charity. But really what's happening is that individuals, and I'll share why in just a minute, are essentially opting out from charitable giving in a pretty dramatic fashion. The report from Fundraising Effectiveness Project just came out today and basically just shared, I haven't even got to read it all, but saying that giving continues to be challenged over the last 7 quarters consecutively. And so lots of need for a change. I think most of us can agree, no matter what the bad news headline is that if we continue to do things the same way and expect a different result, we all know what that's the definition of insanity. And so this has really been a ring the bell, kind of raise the flag moment for our sector to say something's different. Not say it's wrong, but it's different and it's not going well. So we'll just say that. And our sector's a bit fragile, and we need to look at different ways that foster a deeper sense of generosity and gratitude in charitable giving. So I'll just continue to fuel the fire. So without intervention, if we look at that negative trajectory that most of you have seen, if you go from 66% of households that give to charity down to 49% in the last 20 years, that slope is not a positive one. And there are very few, no organizations, corporate organizations would ever survive forever on that. And the nonprofit sector won't either. So if we draw a straight line on that negative trajectory, it ends in 49 years. Do we think that is going to happen? Absolutely not, because it would be hard to get up in the morning if we just gave up on philanthropy. But we do think that there could be a floor that we haven't experienced yet. We hope it's 49% of Americans right now, and that's the floor, and it will reverse. But we have to essentially reassess where we're at and what we're doing, and seeing how we can stop contributing to the negative trajectory in giving. If you want more information on this, this is absolutely total selfless, not selfless. I don't know, selfish. Yeah, selfish plug. I did write a book on this. But don't make money selling books, so no worries there. But it really has been an opportunity to call out, and I think provide a name for what's going on. Many of you are feeling the effect of the generosity crisis, and you haven't known what to call it. But we wrote a book in November that's been in the top selling books in Amazon since it came out, and it's received just incredible response from practitioners and from platforms, from consulting firms, to really identify, where we're at today, but what we need to get out of this. So this idea of radical connection is what we're going to talk a bit more about today, in the sense of using AI to measure connection. So this really just hyperspeeds us back into why are we here, and why do Scott and I, why we dedicated the last many years of our lives only focused on nonprofit AI, and we'll talk about responsible AI at the end of this. But it's truly the belief that, especially writing the book, that we couldn't find any other scalable solution that would reverse the downward trend in giving. It's like 3 truths in every nonprofit I've worked in. Any friend that I have that works in a nonprofit will confirm these truths. And one is that every year, no matter how much money you raised, next year you're asked to raise more money. So that's truth number 1. And so already you're fighting this uphill battle. No matter how successful you are, there'll always be an unquenchable thirst for more revenue. Number 2 is that you're raising more money from fewer people. Now, this isn't 100% true, but it's about 80% true. Organizations that we talk to are raising more money every year from fewer people. The third truth is that most organizations don't have R&D budgets. In fact, I've only met one nonprofit that actually has a philanthropic R&D budget. It happens to be a client of ours. But vast majority, if not almost all organizations, are trying to overcome this more money from less people without the resources to innovate and to take risk and to do things differently. This really, we'll talk about in this presentation, really is about this idea that AI is the only scalable solution to boot us out of this and to generate in a more healthy way, more philanthropic participation, but also that given how the world has shifted onto this AI access over the past, well, many years, but really since November of last year with the release of ChatGPT, that we don't see any future without it. And so it's not a matter of whether or not your organization is going to implement AI, it's how well you do it at this point. And so most organizations are realizing that there's really not a lot of future for those that just put their head in the sand and don't move forward versus moving forward with some sort of AI, but do it in a very responsible and thoughtful and strategic way. So overall, if we compare ours, Scott will talk about this in a few minutes, we'll compare the nonprofit sector, but in the private sector, I said AI is not new. AI has been around for a long time, but really in the last 10 to 15 years, the largest companies in the world have become AI companies because they've gotten really good with using AI for what it does best. It creates precision and it creates personalization. So right now, 50 to 60% of private sector companies are using AI. They're already using it. They're not just using one form of it. They're using 3.8 forms of it on average. I used to work in a cancer hospital, raising money at City of Hope. When I left, I believe we had 12 instances of AI when I left 5 years ago, and now it's probably 100. So this area is absolutely growing. And this also is what this data was taken before ChatGPT was released. I would bet when McKinsey comes out with the new data, it will be something like 97% of private sector companies are using AI, when now we're talking about generative AI being part of that equation. I won't go into this in detail, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least kind of talk at a very high level what AI is, because it's very confusing right now when you have different sectors, including OpenAI, which Scott and I are involved in a pretty deep way with in terms of like a user group, is that when you have an OpenAI say, we invented AI, and you have Microsoft and Google and others that invented AI, all those things are true. There are many different forms and fashions of AI. AI is just a term that represents essentially this idea that computers could do things that humans once only could do. The most classic example is playing chess, which took, many decades actually to train a computer to play chess better than a human. But at this point, AI represents itself in so many different ways. We'll talk more about machine learning and deep learning today, but this is just a real quick overview. MLDL is machine learning, deep learning, automation, like actually nonprofits right now are using a lot of telephone automation to field donors' inquiries. LLM and GPT are large language models. That's everything that we hear about generative AI right now. So OpenAI, Bard, Microsoft Copilot, Bing, all of those are that form of AI. Blockchain, most people are familiar with by thinking about cryptocurrency and how money is exchanged in a secure way. IoT is Internet of Things and how nonprofits are using wearable devices or tracking data on watches or other types of things to get real-time information about their constituents. And the last is AR, VR, augmented reality and virtual reality. We're really encouraged because we see a lot of organizations. We have a few clients that are using augmented and virtual reality right now to help build empathy, to essentially transport donors into a universe that they can really be immersed into their mission. So that's as much as I'll cover any of these, but if anyone wants a deep dive on any of these 6 domains, we're always happy to do that offline and share more, share resources. But we just wanted to make sure that we're not confusing for those on the call that don't really understand the difference between, or if whether or not GPT is AI versus Amazon using is AI. They all are, and they all encompass different forms and fashions of it. At the end of the day, these private sector companies, the 50 to 60%, Of course, social media has been a major player in this, and social media has been this really kind of confusing thing that when it came out, everyone who built it thought this was going to be the unique unifier of the world, that never before in history that I would be intimately connected with someone in a far off country, and that we would know that what we'd have in common together, and we like the same videos or we like the same things. And what most people naively thought is that social media, using lots of AI matching algorithm, was going to bring people together. And we all know now that it has actually had mostly the opposite effect, where we see things like anxiety at an all-time high and depression at an all-time high, happiness at an all-time low, is really because of the use of this AI in a really powerful way. So Tristan Harris runs a nonprofit called the Center for Humane Technology. He was also one of the creators of the movie Social Dilemma, if many of you saw that, probably in 2020, although I think most of us tried to block out 2020 entirely. So you may want to watch it again. In the Social Dilemma, he has a statement that AI and social media was a race to the bottom of the brainstem. And that quote really stuck with me, because it was basically not nonprofits, but these are for-profit organizations using AI and big data as a race to the bottom of the brainstem, almost to like infiltrate your mind so that you can't not think about buying that new pair of Nike, and that you're just going to like, no matter what, you had to get those. He came out about 2 months ago in a new webinar that he did. And I absolutely recommend you follow Tristan Harris. Always know that he's going to be a little bit more on the what bad could happen if we don't pay attention. And that's why I really respect his willingness to like kind of share the hard stuff. But he came out and said, this is no longer a race to the bottom of the brainstem. AI technology has advanced so much since Social Dilemma that it's a race to intimacy. This should absolutely be another hair on the neck kind of moment for you, because essentially intimacy is the one thing that I think most nonprofit practitioners would say is our playbook. The sacred space between a donor and a mission or an organization, that place where something gives of their hard-earned dollars to help fulfill a vision of something that neither of them could do on their own. Intimacy has literally been the thing that the nonprofit industry has kind of held as its like greatest asset. This statement was written not for the nonprofit industry. This is written for the for-profit industry that has gotten really, really good at mining data, really good in computing massive amounts of data to really understand, to build a unique, intimate connection with a purchaser, with a consumer. And what's at risk here is that nonprofits have to elevate their ability to do this in a way that is allowing them to compete with not other nonprofits. And that's probably the biggest takeaway that from the presentations that Scott and I do. The biggest takeaway is not that nonprofits are not competing with each other. You're competing against every other brand that has positioned themselves in a way like a nonprofit. And so that's essentially what's at stake. The other part is that we're seeing in our industry, and we have lots of conversations, with clients of ours and with people that show up at our webinars or in person, is that this fear of like, what's happening with my job? And at the end of the day, like, is AI going to help or hurt my job? And for sure, we could just say this from the very beginning, that we do not believe AI will replace fundraisers. AI will not replace nonprofits, but fundraisers or prospect development people, it will not replace the individual, but those that use AI will replace those that don't. There's absolutely no doubt that AI is a foregone conclusion at this point. And the easiest way to see this, and of course, McKinsey keeps on revising their predictions. About 10 months ago, their prediction is that AI was going to displace about 50% of jobs, or not displace, but augment 50%. And now they had to revise their prediction with OpenAI's ChatGPT. There's no doubt that when we look at 80% of workers are in occupations where at least one job can be formed more quickly by AI. The easiest way to think about this is 2 college students literally anywhere in the country today. One is sitting next to the other, and one is told, hey, you have to do this really arduous report that requires a lot of research and study, and you've got to produce this. And you're allowed to use any tool imaginable, so that person uses GPT or Bard or whatever they pick. The other one has to do this old-fashioned way. Maybe they can use Google, but maybe they have to even go to the library. there's absolutely no doubt that the one that has used GPT actually will perform their task faster, but it's proven also that they'll produce it with a higher degree of accuracy and with a greater degree of satisfaction. So when we're thinking about this for us internally, we can fight this all we want, but at the end of the day, we can take arduous tasks that we don't like to do, the things that we don't wake up thinking, oh, I got to write that report today, and offload some of that and augment some of that through AI. And so we won't go too much more into generative AI today, but at the end of the day, like all AI, all of it can be measured. All 6 domains I shared can be measured in 2 ways. Whether they create a degree of precision for you, so they essentially comb through lots of data to give you a really precise insight on what you should do, or they create personalization for you. So when you're thinking about evaluating any kind of AI, evaluate it in those terms. Does this increase my ability to have precision of what I'm trying to do in my job, make me more accurate in a more timely way? And can it help increase the personalization in which I do that? And that's really as simple as it gets in terms of this evaluation. The result of all this stuff, and that we're seeing it, you're there with me. Like it's just overwhelming. The average person receives 333 emails a day, sees 5,000 to 7,000 ad images a day, and scrolls 300 feet a day. Like we are now like almost zombies for being controlled by all the amounts of data, and either we can fight against it and just be beholden to it, or we can try to harness it, use it to our advantage, and actually start to simplify. This is my last slide, and if you've heard me present before, I almost always share this slide because it's the one takeaway that really proves everything I just shared. The amount of AI and the amount of big data and the amount of advanced personalization and customization that the for-profit world has used through social media and through all the other ad targeting has really led us down this path that the average human is essentially disassociating with life in a way. We just can't consume it all. So in 2000, the average human had, and only AI people use the word human, so forgive me, it's just obviously a very nerdy thing to do. The average person would have an attention span in the year 2000 of 12 seconds. But the average attention span, because of all the things I just shared, is now 8 seconds. So we've lost 4 seconds in our attention span. And I know this is true for me because, like, honestly, I don't even know how often I'll watch a movie and be on my phone at the same time. But also, like, when I was, leading campaigns and building fundraising video, like it used to be, it used to be when I started, like an 8-minute video was the sweet spot. 8 minutes is like a documentary to me now. And now, literally could not handle watching 8 minutes about anyone's mission, even if I cared deeply about it. And it got to the point in my career where like 3 minutes is a sweet spot. I don't know if I could pay attention for 3 minutes anymore. I want the video that's 30 seconds that is just packed filled with all that emotion that I'll respond to. At the end of the day, for the Ted Lasso fans out there, and I know there's shirts on Etsy that you can buy, but essentially when Ted Lasso says to be a goldfish, meaning just like let it roll off your back, it's not very hard because we now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish, thanks to all of the things that we've talked about. Now, I'll end on this and let Scott kind of lift the airplane off after I've, literally just crashed it into the mountain at this point. At the end of the day, I remain entirely optimistic about the philanthropy sector, about our work. It's more important than it's ever been. And I absolutely am a firm believer that AI, if used for good, and we'll talk about responsibly at the end, but if used for good, absolutely AI can help us in a really big way serve our missions better with a higher degree of precision and a higher degree of personalization that help you perform your job better and that give you a greater degree of job satisfaction versus a lot of the burnout that we've been experiencing in our sector.
All right, so on me to lighten the mood here, I'm going to talk more about nonprofits and where we are with AI compared to for-profits. But everything we're talking about, this is not new, right? AI is the buzzword for today that's replacing same conversations, same concerns, same hesitancy that people had around adopting computers 40 years ago, right? Are computers going to replace my job? Am I going to be, fired because someone can bring in a computer and they can transcribe data much quicker than I can? But now computers haven't been replaced, or people haven't been replaced by computers. They've been augmented with computers. You can't imagine hiring someone that doesn't know how to use a computer. That's exactly what this is going to be like in a few years. You can't imagine hiring someone that isn't going to be familiar with how to use AI, because it's going to be so prevalent. And that's already what we're seeing in the for-profit sector, like Nathan shared, but we're not seeing the same thing in the nonprofit sector. So a similar survey was done as to what Nathan shared already for nonprofits. And while 9 out of 10 respondents agree that AI is going to make them more efficient, less than a third of them have actually implemented or experimented with it. Now, again, this was before ChatGPT, so these numbers might have increased, but just compare that against the 50 to 60% of for-profits that have not only deployed AI models, but deployed 3.8 deployments on average per organization. So they're light years ahead of us, and we're still just kind of dabbling. Now, Kelly brought up in one of the questions, Kelly asked or stated, philanthropy is notoriously risk averse. How do we overcome this hesitancy to explore new, innovative ways to fundraise? That's what we want to talk about today, right? It is risk averse, right? But you can't address all the reasons for that aversion globally. Maybe it's my background in psychology, but I would like to figure out what are the specific risks that someone, or hesitancies rather, that someone is holding on to, or an organization is holding on to, because there are a number of them, right? Understandably so. That replacement of jobs, that inefficient use of funds, not having the right talent, anything along those lines. But all of those hesitancies are leading to these stats that we're seeing here, that less than a third of the people who believe the impact will be seen by using AI are actually using AI. Yes, I've heard Guildenstern a lot. I've yet to meet anybody named Guildenstern, but one of these days I'm sure that I will. But we're not here to just talk about, again, implementing AI and try to convince you to do it for the sake of doing it, right? We're talking about leveraging AI to align with the mission of each organization. And unlike the for-profit sector, like Nathan already shared, we have more of a responsibility, more of a duty, because by using this technology, it's not just helping you do your work better, but it's helping you make a greater impact in the world, in your community, in your organization, globally. So this can't be overstated enough that adopting this technology makes an impact. You're not selling widgets, you're not selling shirts, you're not selling bobbleheads. You are making a difference to those that you're serving and to the communities that you're serving. And this technology can allow you to do that more efficiently. So again, being able to identify what those risks are and talk about them to address them, because if they're kind of left in the closet, left kind of behind the curtain, you're never going to be able to get to the heart of what is leading to that risk aversion. So you may be familiar with this chart. This is technology adoption life cycle. This could be applied to basically any new type of technology. And where we are is right at the chasm. The chasm is the most difficult hurdle for new technologies to overcome. It's between the early adopters and the early majority. This is where technologies can be made or broken, right? And this is exactly where we are, specifically in the nonprofit sector. AI in the for-profit sector, as we've said, is already in late majority and laggards. But it's because we have this hesitancy to do it, but you can see that we're not far off from crossing that chasm. I'm sure you hear AI from new vendors, popping up every week, every month, and not just this vendor has a new AI, but offering different services, different flavors of AI, right? That's going to continue to happen. And eventually we are going to be at the early majority and late majority. The problem is that for those who are in the late majority and laggards, it's going to be much harder, significantly harder to catch up to those that have been using this for a while, almost to the point of it being impossible, right? Again, we are not just competing against others in this sector, but the for-profit sector as well, who is years ahead and has still in our playbook on building strong relationships with their constituents.
Yeah. And if I can only add to that as well, one of the things I think has helped with this kind of AI adoption, and so being risk adverse, AI wasn't very accessible up until November of last year. I mean, OpenAI has been around for a while, GPT has been around for a while, but ChatGPT was new. And I think that what that's done is it's allowed us to see that AI can be accessible and it can be usable with very little, entry, like free, and you could already see the benefits of it. And so that's helped. I also would say that by talking this crossing the chasm is really made by essentially organizations that have done it and done it well, that become those credible references to say, this is not super risky anymore. This is something that, by the way, is like been done for quite a while. And there's actually organizations that are noticeably different in terms of their fundraising revenue or whatever. Looking at those organizations really help get over that risk adverseness. But Scott and I both worked in nonprofits. It's the struggle is real, Kelly. You get lots of empathy from us. If we can ever be helpful in talking with the powers that be to share essentially what life is like, it really goes back down to the question of like, what is it going to take to change, and what happens if you don't change? And those are kind of two really critical questions that organizations have to ask themselves right now. What will it take to change? What does it look like if we don't change? And have real honest conversations about that.
Mm-hmm. And just to double back on ChatGPT being kind of a shift in accessibility of AI, I think it's also a shift in direct impact, right? AI has always kind of been this thing off, like, again, in the background. I know if I maybe put a data point into a CRM, somehow this AI is going to change, but I don't really know. I just kind of have to trust it and believe it. But with ChatGPT, you can see immediate impact of asking a question and then saying, no, I don't like that. Say it like you were a pirate or anything along those lines. And it will do exactly what you're asking for with incredible power, efficiency, and time saving, and respond to any specific request you have. So it's the accessibility and that direct impact. And I think it's obviously helping with efficiency, but also being a good example of AI in general, right? Just kind of helping put a face to what AI is and what's been going on behind the scenes for a while now. So I would be happy to have a debate with anyone that says that this is not one of the best movies ever made. It's definitely in my top 5, but that's not what today's talk is about. This quote, a very popular quote from Ferris Bueller, I think could be applied to our conversation as well. If we just replace a few words, technology moves pretty fast. And if you don't stop to figure out what's going on, you could miss it, right? It is moving blazing fast. Nathan and I have been in this space for 6 years now. And sometimes we're all like, we'll go a week without talking to each other and bring each other up on news of new things ChatGPT can do. And it seems even intimidating to us because it is moving so fast. One thing to note, when people say that they're ChatGPT experts, this technology has only been around since November, right? So they're learning it just like anybody else, right? So it's good to talk to people who are using this technology at various levels and just learn from their trials, their errors, their missteps, but it's all a collaborative community. So be able to, open and engage conversation with others that have tried it and see where you can learn from what it is that they're doing. But to Nathan's point earlier, what is it about now? Why are we all talking about AI now? Not just because of ChatGPT, but leading up to this. And we weren't talking about it, 10, 15 years ago. So next slide, Nathan. It's not just one thing that has happened. It's a series of advancements and breakthroughs in computation and data that are leading to kind of all coming together and allowing us to have AI accessible for our sector. Something such as big data, right? Big data, I'm sure in each of your organizations, you're probably tracking more data now than you were maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, right? Big data was a big push about 10 years ago, along with data science, now that there's all this data to analyze, right? But you need to have fast computing power. You need to have affordable computing power. All of that applies by Moore's law, that technology gets twice as fast and half as cheap every single year, and deep learning. So advancements in machine learning and artificial intelligence, breakthroughs and algorithms that deep learning models are learning more like human brains as opposed to just rule-based logic, right? And so it can find significantly deeper patterns at incredible rates that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. So it's these all things coming together that allow us to talk about this today. If it was just a few of them, if it was just a lot of data and better models to predict that data, but it's not affordable and you can't do it fast, we wouldn't be talking about this today. If it was just fast computation power and affordable, but there's no data to analyze and you can't really do much with it because you don't have those types of models, we wouldn't be here. So it's really a confluence of a lot of great breakthroughs that allow us to have this conversation. But for nonprofits, what does that mean? Just if you could go back for a little bit. It allows us to analyze more data and do so accurately. It allows us to be more objective in our decision-making, allows us to not just force models to look at data points that we think are going to be impactful or we want to prioritize, like just giving patterns or wealth, but throw everything that we possibly can at it and allow it, the model, to tell us what makes an impact. So moving to more objective decision-making, finding actual motivations for donor behavior and non-donor behavior. We've been able to find that non-donors, I'm sure this is not groundbreaking information, but the fact that we can prove it, non-donors do not act or engage with you like donors do. And their motivation to make their first gift is distinctly different, no matter what sector or what type of nonprofit, than their motivation to make a repeat gift. And we're able to dig into those unique motivations, not just for groups of donors or non-donors, but each individual specifically, because we can dig much further than just looking at giving patterns and wealth indicators. Now, if you can go to the next one. So we know this is not, again, groundbreaking information, but we're allowed to talk about it now, that philanthropy follows connection, not someone's wealth. They're not giving because they have capacity. Elon Musk, Bill Gates have insane amounts of capacity, but they're not giving equal amounts to every nonprofit or even proportionate amounts to every nonprofit because they don't have a connection with each nonprofit, right? I'm sure we've all come across a board member or a campaign volunteer that says, well, why don't we just ask Bill Gates for this amount and he could write this amount in one check and we'd all be done with our jobs. I don't know if that's ever worked for anybody because there is no connection or engagement there, right? So it's not wealth that's determining someone's likelihood to make a gift, but our sector has been focused on wealth for way too long. Wealth has always been the target. It's about finding those wealthy individuals and then backfilling to build a connection with them. Tell them why they should make a gift to you, right? But it's putting the cart before the horse. The reason it has been done is because wealth is significantly easier to quantify. You can find someone's address, you can pull it up on Zillow, see how much it is, and take a guess at what they might be able to have as a result. You can look at how much they've given to you or other nonprofits in the past and make a guess as to what they might be able to give in the future, right? But it's significantly harder, or has been significantly harder, to quantify their connection. And so we just kind of push that aside. We just focused on wealth and let wealth drive all conversation. And so it has a strong hold on our sector, and it's evidenced by the fact, Nathan does this whenever there's a conversation, by asking people, how many of you know your financial goals year over year? And usually 9 out of 10 people raise their hand, but then following up with, well, how many of you know your current retention rates? And maybe 1 out of 10 raise their hand. That's because it's driven by wealth. And so being able to take the shift away from that with the applications, with AI, with big data, allows us to really focus on what we should be focusing on, which is that depth of connection. So these conversations that we're having now, we were not having a couple of years ago, right? Not just because of the big data, the computing power and all that, but 4 years ago, we weren't talking about how to make use of AI, what success you're seeing with AI. We were talking about, what is AI? What is this buzzword that everyone's talking about, but how do we put it into real world terms? I think we've crossed that part of the chasm, at least, where we can talk more specifically about why you should use it and what it can do for you, and not just what is this big kind of elephant in the room that everybody's talking about. But also, we're able to dig deeper again with the models. And so by not limiting on small amounts of data, by focusing on the giving and the wealth, we're able to be much more precise with our efforts, which brings us to precision philanthropy. Just like precision health, precision medicine, it's not about the staff, it's about the tools. It's about augmenting and supplying every member of your team with this type of technology so you can empower them with accurate and actionable data in real time. It allows you to identify not just who is engaging with you, but sometimes more importantly, who isn't engaging with you. Who do you not need to spend your time with right now because they're going to be a waste of your major gift officer's time or a waste of a direct mail piece. Right now, at this current moment, they're not raising their hand enough for you to know or for you to spend your time with them. With precision philanthropy, we can get to that level. It can allow you to put your resources where you're going to have a much more significant ROI and facilitate and strengthen relationships that might be flying under the radar. Next slide, Nathan. So by being able to do this, we've seen this, we've worked with, again, hundreds of different clients through our time building AI, and we're seeing significant boosts everywhere. And your team members are allowed to do their work without getting as many no's as they were getting before, right? They're approaching the right people, people who want to be engaged and haven't been given an opportunity to share their story or share their impact or make a difference with that organization. So they're seeing a higher quality of work, which allows them to be more satisfied. Right? We all know that the major gift officer turnover rate is about 18 months, which is insane to think about. But it's plagued by the fact that the names that they're told to prioritize are often not great names. They're wealthy and they're people that they want, that the organization wants to get in front of because they can make a significant gift, but it's not the right reason and it's not the right purpose, not the right person either. So being able to identify who those right people are allows you to be incredibly more efficient and see that satisfaction and make that impact throughout your organization. So by working with the organizations, we've been able to do a lot of things. Like Nathan said, first part is always important to identify what this means for your organization. It's not one size fits all. AI is not a silver bullet that's going to solve every problem. But how can we assist with our product or what other vendors using other AI? How can it address your specific need, your specific situation, and your organization as a whole? And in doing this, we've been able to work with Children's Minnesota. We were using AI for them, and they decreased their number of mailers, they decreased the amount of people that they were mailing to, but seeing same, if not more, response on those mailers and allow them to open up their budget to send 2 more mailers out this year. So greater success with each one, and then more opportunities for that greater success. We've worked with Pittsburgh State University, who was able to use our models to be able to identify someone that had been making small gifts for a while, never was on anybody's radar. A major gift officer went out to meet them to just learn more about this story because they had a very high score. And it turns out that person put Pittsburgh State in their estate years ago and just never told anybody. Nobody knew about it, but they had been raising their hand and showing up. They just weren't meeting some of the other metrics to have put them into portfolio. And now they can facilitate, they can steward that relationship much more effectively and show the person the impact that their gift will have. And then World Vision, we've worked with them, and by using these scores, they're getting 4 times as high of a retention rate, and they're able to see average gifts of 50 times higher, 50 times higher for higher scores than lower scores. So there is significant impact here. Again, it's all about identifying what is the reason for that aversion, the hesitancy, and how can we address that with our approach, with the model. What is the tool to apply that approach? And then digging into, this is a journey, right? It's never ending. It's not all right, here's your AI, we're done, let's walk off and good luck. This is a collaboration, it's change management. We're supplying your team is taking on a new tool that they haven't had experience with before. So being able to make sure that we can facilitate those conversations so that they can see the greatest success with it. And next slide, a number of other questions as you're going through this part in your journey that are worth talking about with your team members, with vendors that you're vetting, with other individuals that might have been using these tools are, how does it impact your donors? How does it impact the relationships you have with donors and who you can have relationships with? And how does the model learn to evolve with your change in the organization over time? Is it allow us to sound authentic or be authentic? Is it better by bringing in more people, or is it better by bringing in higher quality individuals? are these tools going to replace or augment what we're doing? How do we make sure that we're not just shifting the focus to someone else, but also don't know what these models are prioritizing, and we don't have a lot of trust in it? And then what is the opportunity or the appetite for systemic change? Is the organization open to being able to tackle this new objective and this new tool to see significant growth? And then what happens on the opposite end if that change doesn't occur? This is a small number of questions, but we're, again, more than happy to have these conversations with you and your team as you start talking about how you might be able to take on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, asking the question, are we ready or where do we start, is really the right question. For organizations that just buy AI and try to bolt it on because someone told them that they had to compete, they have about a 50-50 chance of actually being successful in that AI. But really understanding what is the appetite for change, what happens if we don't change, and really thinking about your entire team. And, from anyone that's implemented a CRM, very similar. And it's like, how is this going to change the way we do business versus something that we just bought and check the box on? And so this idea of AI readiness can't be understated, of really understanding what your organization's ability is to consume that and move on.
So where we are, this is not about AI as the standard sense, but AI for too long has been a black box, right? The CEO of Google recently said that building AI responsibly is the only race that really matters, especially in the nonprofit sector. They're saying that for the for-profit sector, it's 100 times that for the nonprofit sector, because our currency for this sector is trust. And so if you're establishing relationships, if you're the face of your organization, you need to be able to trust that the models you're using are prioritizing people for the right reasons. And you can't do that if you're not using responsible AI. So this doesn't fall on just a few people's shoulders or just the vendor's shoulders. This is everyone's responsibility. And so Nathan will be talking about that in a little bit, but this is a pivotal moment for our sector to get ahead of this before it's too late, to make sure that we're not just throwing models all around and thinking about after the fact, oh, well, did we do the right thing? Did we build them appropriately? Or are we prioritizing the right information? But doing so at the very beginning, at the onset of each of these models. And again, we know that AI for nonprofits is a given. It's not a matter of if, but when. We're going to see this more and more. Nonprofits are going to be picking up different applications of artificial intelligence, but effectively implementing this, we've also seen this just as much. Just because you have a tool, it doesn't mean that it's full comprehension or full understanding from the team of how to apply it. And so it is that journey, that ongoing journey, that training, that conversation, that collaboration to make sure that you're using it effectively and using it responsibly so that we don't continue to see this decline in charitable giving like we've been seeing for way too long.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for all that, Scott. And I know I'll flow through this next little bit, and then I know we have another question as well. So one is I have to pay DonorSearch a lot of credit because back in 2017, I started working in machine learning and was really hoping I could find a place where I could go and have safe, not sound stupid and ask questions to other people who are kind of having the same issues. And at the end of the day, there was really no avenue for that every answer I got was essentially biased from the company that was like, this is our view on this, and that's why you should hire us. Fast forward, so several years, really, it was kind of burdened by this and wanting to create an open source, basically an initiative or a collaboration where people could come together no matter what company you're working with and really share best practices and share lessons learned and things like that. What we've realized is that, and we've looked at this idea of responsible AI in the world, there's probably 1,000 frameworks. The White House has a new one that they're working on. They've been working on for years. Geneva has one. There's probably literally 1,000 frameworks, but none of them are built specifically for our industry, specifically fundraising, which is a $500 billion industry with almost no guidelines for what's responsible or what is not. When you hear the word responsible AI from the White House, they're talking about AI that serves humans' best interest. That literally translates to them making sure that AI doesn't kill people. At the end of the day, and so they're talking about trust and trusting AI so that it doesn't harm humanity. Our sector talks about trust in the sense of how do we bridge this and build this unique relationship with donors? So we really felt like we had to have our own framework for responsible AI in our sector. And DonorSearch has given me a lot of ability to bring together all competitors and companies and consulting firms, like all under one roof, to really help build this framework. So just a real quick update on this. So 2 weeks ago, after about 1,700 emails, 92 people weighed in, we released the first framework for responsible AI that our sector has. You can go to it by going to fundraising.ai. This is not owned by DonorSearch. It's not owned by anyone. It's not a nonprofit. It is literally a completely open source collaboration. It took 4 years in the making. At the end of the day, we have 3 bodies of work. And I share this because if any of you want to be a part of this, please DM me and let me know. The framework for responsible AI for fundraising, the first of its kind in the world. We're really, really fortunate, DonorSearch kind of leading the charge and helping bring everyone together, but this is truly open to everyone. We also have what's coming up is a global summit for responsible fundraising. Anyone on this call that wants to know more about anything that we've talked about, plus a lot more about AI, will have the opportunity at a free 2-day summit, a virtual summit that's hosted by, and I'll share in just a minute, lots of incredible organizations have come together. So 30 sessions to answer pretty much any question you could ever want to know over a 2-day period in October 23rd and 24th. And the last will be a study that we'll do here in the next year. The tenets for responsible AI are here, but I actually just encourage you go to fundraising.ai, click on the button for framework. Each one of these 10 principles are outlined in what they mean. And again, this is a collaboration of 92 people who weighed into this in over 1,700 emails. It was pretty exhaustive, and I never want to have to do this again. The global summit, like I just said, is October 23rd, 24th. If you go to Fundraising AI, click on summit, and you can register today for free. You should. We expect about 10,000 people will be joining that. And so you'll have a lot of friends and you'll be in good company. So please share the link with anyone that you know that's thinking about this, that wants to know more about AI and what responsible AI means for our sector. Really going back to that area that Scott shared is that, there's no doubt that AI is a given in our sector, that everyone will end up using it if they're going to successfully compete. But whether or not they use it well will be something that is yet to be seen. And we're really trying hard to provide some guidelines for responsible AI. Here's the QR code. It's too hard to type in fundraising.ai. That was a subtle joke. It's pretty easy domain to remember. And you could go there and see the framework and register. You could sign the framework as a practitioner. You could sign the framework as a company. You can sign up for the summit today and it won't cost you anything. And I guess I didn't list the sponsors. So I want to list the sponsors really quick, or just a couple of them. But of course, we've got a Salesforce and Giving Tuesday, and Microsoft and Amazon and AWS, RKD, DonorSearch, iWave, who else? Benzueli, Flessner, GG&A. So all these companies that work together collaboratively and compete with each other, and so many more. If you look at them on the website, you'll see them all. This has been an amazing, amazing testament to our sector that's willing to put their competitiveness aside to say, this is so important that we need to do something together. So truly, I'm just so proud of this effort and our role in this effort as well. So I hope you all jump in there. So Scott, I see the question about, so we're at 4 minutes. We have time for 1 to 2 maybe. Can you talk about predictive modeling for existing donor base to automate their preferences? If they've only given in October for 20 years, should we still send them 4 appeals a year? It's a pretty multifaceted question.
Yeah. So there are models that can be built for automating those type of preferences. Basically, when it comes to AI, there's no model that can't be built as long as you have a clear target, as long as you have enough examples of target and you have enough data that could predict that target, right?
Why don't you share what a target is first, for those that don't know machine learning terminology.
Perfect. So a target is the example that you're trying to replicate or find more of, right? So the targets for our standard models are donor retention and non-donor acquisition. Donor retention would be anyone who has made a philanthropic gift within the last 12 months. That's the target. The training leading up to that is looking at all the data points finding patterns to indicate who is or who is not going to be in that 12-month giving window, right? So then we're able to use those predictions moving forward. So this instance, the target would be someone's preference. What is it that they respond to? So seeing what they respond to, it's just as important to know what they didn't respond to, and then being able to build the examples off of that. When I think about that person who's only giving in October for 20 years, I would say instead of the 4 appeals, I would want to go out to meet that person to see they've been responding for 20 years. I'm sure that there's more of a story that they have that you won't be able to get from just a direct appeal that they would love to share with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the other side of that question will be, has the velocity of their gifts changed over time? Are they always the same, or are they increasing? So AI would pick up on trends that feel like this person's leaning on a bit more because they're giving more over versus saying the same. This is really going back to this idea that AI will not replace fundraisers, but having insight, this person would score probably pretty high in an AI model because of the consistency of their gifts, especially if they were giving more. That you would definitely arm a fundraiser with that knowledge to say, this is a very, very warm lead. This person has all signs of pointing to yes. Now, essentially talk to them about other things that they might want. I know someone asked, this recording will be posted on YouTube. I think it's usually within a day to 2 days. And you'll be able to find it under the DonorSearch channel on YouTube that way. And anyone that, I know we're really right at time. I hope this was helpful. You could tell that Scott and I have been pent up a little bit and not doing these webinars because we just like throwing it all at you all at once. So I hope it was helpful and at least sparked a little bit of thought. If we personally, professionally can ever be helpful to you or your team as you're evaluating what's next and how to navigate all of this change, please let us know. We love this space. Both AI and the nonprofit sector, and we love connecting with you. So join Fundraising AI LinkedIn group because you'll get all the updates on there. Sign up for the summit, tell your friends, and hope you all have a great day. Thanks for all the work that you do every day to make the world a better place.
Thank you all.